Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of the One the Many videocast. My name is Rob Guzman. How are you today? I'm doing well. So we got a busy program for you today. I've got 3 different issues that I want to cover, and I want to make this video a little more short, a little more pithy than I usually do, just so I have a little bit more of an audience. I think the longer the video, generally, the fewer people finish the video. So this time around, I'm going to try to be a little bit quicker in my answers. So let me know if you think that's better or worse. Glad to hear from my audience on all these things. So the first thing I want to talk about today is a story that's been percolating actually in my feed for a little while. I wanted to wait a few weeks to talk about it, but here I am talking about it, and that is the cooperation between Google and China. So to give you some context, we have China is this authoritarian state that is fast moving, I think, towards a totalitarian state. You had several months ago, I think it was actually last year, where the Chinese president and chairman of the Communist Party of China, they basically abolished his term limit, made him president for life. And on top of that, China is now trying to implement this new policy, this new program that they're calling social credit, which is a way for the government to assign everybody in the country a score, a personal score out of 800 that tells the government how good of a citizen you are, how good of a Chinese citizen you are, how loyal you are. So what goes into this score? Things like what you buy at a store. Are you buying healthy food or are you buying alcohol and drugs? If you're buying a lot of cigarettes, maybe you get docked a few points. If you're buying healthy fruits and vegetables, that's good. You get a couple of extra bonus points. What else goes in? Who you date, who you associate with, where you work, how good a job you do at your work, what your family members say about the government and about other things. These all factor into their idea of a social credit score that everyone will have. Now, how are they going to do this? How are they going to implement it? Well, straight out of 1984, straight out of Big Brother. They're basically going to set up surveillance cameras that have facial recognition technology. They're going to put in recorders and basically monitor people 24 hours a day. Now, this is, I think, the first example of what we could call like digitized totalitarianism. This is a very scary development. I think if you have any friends or family in China, you should tell them to get out of Dodge, get out of there before this gets really bad. I don't anticipate it going well, but there's more to say on this. So not only is China taking steps towards doing this, which it has, it's been building for a few years now. Now we have an American company, Google, who is now actively cooperating with China in doing this. So how are they cooperating? Well, first of all, Google supposedly pulled out of China 8 years ago, but that isn't totally true. They left some employees there, they left some offices there. They have at least 700 employees right now in China. And Eric Schmidt, who is the former chairman of Google, claimed that he believes the internet's going to split in half, that one half's going to be run by America, one half's going to be run by China, and it sounds to me like Google is sort of hedging their bets. So what's the big project that they're using to help cooperate and build this bridge between Google and China? Well, that is this thing that they're calling Project Dragonfly, which is a new search engine, a censored search engine that Google will roll out to China eventually. It's still in the early phases, where you can only do searches if you log in, and the government will have the ability to blacklist certain terms, whether that's Nobel Prize information about things like Tiananmen Square, things the Chinese government doesn't want their people reading about. And so this is a horrific development. I think it's really bad. What are some of the takeaways here? Well, first of all, I want to say that Google is engaged in essentially So Google is a large company that has made wonderful products and reached a tremendous amount of wealth. And they only got that way by building up their company in the American free enterprise system. They basically required American freedom and American liberty to build their product, and now what they're doing is exporting their brand into markets that deny that very concept. So in a sense, Google is essentially slapping or biting the hand that feeds them in a way. But the more important philosophic takeaway here, the really important ethical and philosophic epistemological principle you should take away, is this idea that production, success, technological innovation cannot occur with force. The principle here is that the mind, to function properly, cannot be forced. You cannot force somebody to think. You cannot force somebody to innovate. In order to produce any technology or to create wealth, you have to understand the facts of reality. You have to understand the laws of physics. You have to understand the laws of chemistry. You have to understand how reality works. And to do that, you have to put no consideration above the facts in your mind. You can't put alongside understanding of physics and chemistry the dictates and mandates of the latest bureaucratic 5-year plan. Just because some official or some group or some person wants something to be true doesn't make it so. You have to actually examine reality and come to an understanding of reality in order to effectively manipulate and build on reality. Think about this and apply it to some real examples. If there's a plague, doesn't matter how much the government wants the plague to be fixed, you need medical researchers to understand the virus and create vaccines and antidotes. You need a doctor who's trained to identify the symptoms and treat those people in order to reduce the numbers of the plague. If you're building a bridge, we hear all the time about China creating these wonderful infrastructure plans. They can kind of snap their fingers and build a bridge, whereas the West has to vote on it or have multiple consumers buy into it, but the government can just decree it in China. Well, it's not exactly true. The bridge is built by civil engineers, people who have to understand the principles of load, who have to understand how to distribute mass. No bureaucratic order or gun can force somebody to do that. In fact, if you put a gun to someone's head and tell them, build me a bridge, they're going to do whatever they can to avoid death. Okay, they're not going to build a bridge that's going to, they'll do the best they can given the circumstances, but they can't be free. They can't be free to inquire. They can't be free to understand reality and learn the facts in order to come to an understanding of how to make that bridge the best they can. The best symbol for this, if you want a historical symbol to kind of put the stamp on this, is Galileo. Galileo had all these wonderful things to say about science when he wrote, and the most famous, of course, was the idea that the Earth is not the center of the universe or the galaxy, but that the sun is the center, and the Earth revolves around the sun. Now, the church wasn't a big fan of this doctrine, and they put him under house arrest, and he was forced to recant his view. In fact, at his trial, it was it said that he whispered as he was being led away to be put under house arrest after he recanted, and yet it moves. Essentially claiming that no matter what the official inquisitors had to say, no matter what the government at the time had to say, no matter what the religious leaders had to say, Galileo claimed at that time that the facts were the facts, and it didn't matter what other people had to say about them. So the takeaway here is you cannot force a mind. It's not possible. And the only way a dictatorial, totalitarian state like China can become a big brother, can do what it wants to do, is to basically be a parasite on freer systems. Whether that's a free system that existed before their government took hold, or whether it's a foreign power like the United States, which is mostly free enough for it to develop technology, things like Facebook and Google, and then essentially use the fruits of that technology, use the fruits of the freedom that those individual scientists and computer engineers had in order to erect this crazy totalitarian web, this totally bankrupt system. So I think that we haven't seen the worst of this story. I think it'll get much worse. And I think that Google's model used to be don't be evil. I think this is the pinnacle of evil, is to basically kowtow and cooperate, be a collaborator for a totalitarian state, or a totalitarian state in training, and essentially use what you have, use the freedom you have to deny freedom, to help this country repress its people. I think it's a totally bankrupt, it's ethically unspeakable, and I think Google should be ashamed of themselves. And I think that the response from the West should be that customers should boycott them. I think they should be penalized in the press. I think they should take a beating. And they've been evasive about this. They haven't really answered questions about Dragonfly. They've had a few of their employees have resigned. I think something like 7 have resigned. That is not nearly enough. You need a huge amount of people to resign here. And they have to resign for the right reason, which unfortunately in our culture, I don't think a lot of them understand the relationship of force and mind. They don't understand that these two are opposites. They don't have the proper philosophic foundation, and so they don't have the moral backbone to stand up for this, for the right reasons. So that's what I have to say about that.